There are several important moving parts for any successful digital transformation, but many people don't understand what those different work streams are. So what I want to talk about today are those major work streams that are instrumental to any successful digital transformation. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And all of us are interested in digital transformation. Most of us are interested in learning more about transformation and ultimately managing a successful transformation. But oftentimes we don't understand what those major components are of an effective transformation. So what I want to do today is talk about those major work streams that are crucial to being successful in your transformation. And during this discussion, I'm actually going to refer to a PowerPoint slide that I've included a visual of here that provides an overview of some of those different work streams. So I'm going to unpack this graphic a bit and show you a little bit about what each of these work streams mean. And if you'd like to download this graphic, by the way, I've included a link below that you can go to our website and download this exact graphic. But in the meantime, I'll describe what each of these work streams mean and how it can apply to your digital transformation. The first critical aspect of any digital transformation is to consider the overall strategy and alignment. There's two different dimensions of strategy and alignment. One is how well aligned is our digital transformation, the goals and objectives, the parameters, the project governance. How aligned is that transformation framework with our overall organizational goals and objectives? So that's the first thing we have to unpack and make sure we've got alignment on. The second thing we have to ensure we have alignment on is just amongst us as individuals and humans. Are the key stakeholders within the organization completely aligned? Are they on the same page with the direction we're headed? And you can have a perfect strategy and the strategy that makes the most sense for your organization, but if your team isn't aligned, it's much better to have a less perfect strategy, but more alignment. So that's the key here, is to make sure that we've got alignment between the strategy of the transformation as well as the organization, as well as alignment amongst the different key stakeholders and executives within the organization. Now, one of the key starting points to getting to the strategy alignment workstream, and the first deliverable that could come from that, is your overall strategic articulation. And generally what that entails is a strategic articulation map where we unpack and translate the overall organizational goals and objectives into lower level digital transformation goals and objectives. And oftentimes what that does is it sets a vision and a course for where we're headed, and it ensures we identify where we're aligned, where we might be misaligned, and where we need to get aligned ultimately. Now, the next important piece of an effective digital transformation and the next important work stream to consider is your overall business process management. And there's a number of different components within business process management. In fact, if you check my YouTube channel, I have a number of different videos out there that explain how to conduct business process management, whether you should focus on your as is or your to be or both. A lot of different tips out there on my YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. But in the meantime, for this video, what I'd say to summarize is that we need to define what our business processes are in the context of creating a sort of business blueprint for how technology might enable some business process improvements. And to get there, we need to start with our current state assessment of our current business processes and workflows, identifying what's working well, where the pain points are, where the opportunities for improvement are, so that we can ultimately define that future state, which would be the improved business processes, and also identifying how technology might help enable some of those different business processes. Now, one word of note here is that a lot of times software vendors and system integrators will encourage you to avoid this step in the process and to not worry about business process management until you get to the implementation. And that's a big mistake, and it's a big mistake that a lot of organizations make. And the reason for that is, as I mentioned, you want this to be somewhat of a business blueprint. This is the vision and the roadmap for how you're going to deploy technologies. If you haven't defined your current state and ultimately your future state, then you're not going to know how to deploy technology effectively, and you're certainly not going to get the maximum business value out of those investments in technology. Now, you certainly don't want to go into a great amount of detail early in the project. When you get to the design and build stage, you certainly will get down to the transactional workflow level. But earlier in the process, as you're defining your digital strategy, your roadmap, you're evaluating potential software solutions, and ultimately getting ready for the implementation, that's the time where you want to define those macro end-to-end processes that get to just enough detail that you don't necessarily need to know what technology you're deploying. It's agnostically looking at how your organization should look in the future. So that business process management piece should start early in the digital strategy and software evaluation phase and continue iteratively through the implementation as well. Now, the next work stream that's worth discussing here as it relates to digital transformation is organizational change management. And this is essentially the human or the people element of the transformation. Now, there are a number of different components of organizational change management that become increasingly important at different times in the project. One of the first deliverables from organizational change management is organizational readiness, and looking at how ready the organization is for change, and ultimately where are the pockets of resistance within the organization. It's not a matter of if there's resistance, because there is. I can assure you that any organization out there has resistance to change to some degree, but the key is to understand what are the sources of resistance, even those deep underlying sources of resistance that can be hard to uncover. And generally, those organizational assessments are a great way to tackle this or to figure out where the pockets of resistance are so that we can ultimately create a change strategy and plan that takes those considerations into account. Once we've created that change strategy and plan, we start to look at different subcomponents of organizational change, like organizational design, defining what the change impacts are to the organization, the communications, the training. A lot of different pieces of change management need to happen to be successful. And again, this is arguably the most important part of the overall digital transformation, but yet it's commonly the most overlooked. So we want to make sure that we address this well and make sure that we err on the side of overinvesting in effective organizational change management to ensure that we have a successful digital transformation. Now, if you'd like to learn more about change management in particular, this particular work stream, I've just given you a brief summary, but we have other videos on my YouTube channel that describe change management in more detail. And I also encourage you to download our Guide to Organizational Change Management, which gives a ton of different best practices around change management. It unpacks these different sub-work streams that I've talked about in addition to others. So I encourage you to download that. I've included a link below so you can take a look at that as well. The next work stream, which is commonly the one that organizations tend to fixate on the most, is the overall technology work stream. This is where we look at specific applications, specific technologies that might help improve our business. Very important work stream, but it's the only one of our work streams that you can see and touch and feel. So for that reason, organizations tend to spend too much time on this work stream and not enough time on the other work streams that I've talked about so far and the ones I have yet to cover. But having said that, you still want to look at technologies. You want to consider objectively what are those different technologies out there, what ones can best automate our business, what ones are the most mature and able to handle our needs today as well as in the future. And these are all considerations that need to be taken into account. Now, just a few tips along this work stream is to make sure that you're not fixating on one type of technology. A lot of times organizations have biases towards certain vendors or certain types of technologies, or they omit or don't consider other technologies that might be a good fit for their organizations. So when you're looking at your technology options, you want to make sure you do so in an agnostic way and objectively align those technology possibilities with your overall goals and objectives as an organization, as well as the business processes and the organizational change pieces that I've already talked about. Now, the next work stream, which is similar to the one I just discussed around technology, is architecture, data, and integration. This is a little bit different than the one I just talked about in that we're not talking about specific software solutions or applications. We're talking here about how do we tie it all together. Most digital transformations entail multiple technologies, multiple touch points throughout an organization from a technical perspective. So we've got to figure out what is our overall solution architecture, what's our plan to tie together multiple systems, where does the data reside, how do we manage the master data management, and how do we migrate the data over to the new systems, and how do we keep that common single source of truth. So all those things are things that need to be defined, especially if you have multiple systems. But even if you're deploying a single enterprise-wide system or a single ERP system, you still need to figure this stuff out in between modules. ERP systems have different modules and different workflows that need to be integrated. So the architecture, integration, and data becomes very important. And what commonly happens with project teams and overall transformations is they put this work stream off until the end of the project and then realize they have too much work to do in a way that delays the project. So you want to make sure you get a head start on this work stream, because ultimately the things you identify as part of your overall architecture strategy, your overall integration and data strategies are going to affect the overall implementation timeline. And typically this is on the critical path to ensuring that you finish your project on time. So make sure you've addressed all those different non-software pieces of the technology work streams as well, because that's going to be very important to an effective transformation. Now, the final work stream I'll talk about here is program management and quality assurance. This is something that begins in the digital strategy phase and should continue all the way through implementation and even post-implementation. And essentially what we're talking about here is not project management, but program management. So tying together all the different work streams that we've just talked about, as well as managing multiple resources from multiple different sources. So you have internal resources that are involved in the project. You have your system integrator. You have a change management team. You probably will have an architect, some data people. You have a lot of different resources doing a lot of different things, a lot of different moving parts. And program management is a way to tie together the entire program in a way that has a comprehensive plan that you can execute to. And it's not just managing to a plan, it's also identifying where the potential risks are. And that's where the quality assurance piece of this comes into play. So we don't want to wait until risks become so great that we can't fix them. We want to proactively identify risks and ultimately identify how we can mitigate those risks throughout the implementation. So effective risk mitigation and quality assurance is a key part of program management, and that's something that most system integrators, software vendors, and even internal project teams aren't very good at. So you want to make sure you have outside expertise that can help you do this. So this is just a brief summary of some of these major work streams that will make your digital transformation more successful. Again, if you'd like to download the graphic that I've referred to here today, click the link below and you can go to our website and download that graphic for your future reference, and so you can digest this in more detail. I also encourage you to download our annual digital transformation report, which provides a number of best practices and lessons learned from transformations throughout the world, as well as independent software rankings and reviews to help you decide what technology or technologies might be the best fit for your organization. I've included links to that resource as well, in addition to some other resources that I think might help you. So be sure to check out those resources in the description below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day.